Let's talk about Sleepaway Camp, a low-budget, early 80s slasher movie that's very, very unremarkable, up until the twist at the end. I think anybody who is an enjoyer of 80s horror has seen this movie and knows the twist, and I think even people who haven't seen the movie have seen the twist or are aware of the twist, but honestly, if you haven't seen it and want to witness one of the greatest twists in horror history, don't watch my video because I'm talking about the sequels and I'm gonna have to give it away. You have until the end of this sentence to turn the video off. End of sentence. Basic premise of the first Sleepaway Camp movie is it opens with two kids and their two dads on the lake. There's a boating accident, you don't exactly see which kid survives, but when we jump forward a few years later, we see Angela and we figure, hey, that's the daughter who survived. In the time between the accident and the start of the movie, Angela has been living with her aunt, who is a fucking Fruit Loop.
Goodies for the ride up to camp. Wasn't that nice of me? Any chips? Why, of course. I believe there's a whole bag.
Which raises the question, what happened to her other dad? Either way, teen drama and shenanigans ensue while the kids are at camp. People get killed, and we find out that Angela's the killer. However, it actually wasn't Angela, it was Peter, the little boy from the opening. We learn that the aunt always wanted a girl and basically forced Peter to undergo gender reassignment surgery and masquerade as a girl for all of his life. This is revealed when we see Angela at the end with no clothes on. I'm not gonna show the fucking dick, because I don't want to get suspended, but, you know, it wasn't actually Felissa Rose doing that. They got a stagehand in a Felissa Rose mask. Either way, the movie ends with a shot of Angela snarling at the camera. It's pretty horrifying. The movie itself is nothing special. It has some good kill scenes, and I do like that it has the fucking balls to actually feature young teenage actors rather than 20-something-year-olds pretending to be teenagers. The movie had even bigger balls to actually feature a character who is just blatantly a full-on fucking child molester. Yeah, the chef character makes some very, very obscene and disgusting comments when he sees the young campers come off of the bus.
Look at all that young, fresh chicken. Where I come from, we call them baldies. Makes your mouth water, don't it?
And then for some reason, James Earl Jones' dad is just like laughing it off. He's like, "Oh, Diddley, that's our Diddley." Like what? It's like funny, but it's funny for the wrong reasons. It's funny because it's like, oh my god, somebody actually put this in the movie. Why is this here? Like, it's just, oh god. At least he gets like horribly burned, and we get to see him suffering for what is like seems like a fucking eternity on the floor. Without the ending though, it's just a slightly more intense Friday the 13th Part 1. I like it, but I seldom get the urge to rewatch it. From what I've read, the movie is somewhat of a topic of debate among the trans community over whether it is transphobic or not. Some people in the trans community actually fucking absolutely love this movie, and some fucking really hate it and think that it does nothing but make them look bad. I can see the argument for both sides, but I do like this movie as a horror fan. Sleepaway Camp was a fucking major success. It made $11 million against a $350,000 budget, so naturally one would assume, being the 80s, that a sequel would be rushed into production. But no, it actually took about 5 years for that to happen. In the late 1980s, director Robert Hiltzik sold the sequel rights to director Michael A. Simpson, who was tasked with directing 2 sequels back-to-back with a budget of what I have read as around $800 grand. Sleepaway Camp 2 was released in 1988, and Sleepaway Camp 3 was released in 1989. Felissa Rose was attending school at the time and was not able to return to the series. Instead, the role of Angela was taken over by Pamela Springsteen, younger sister of musician Bruce Springsteen. Pamela Springsteen did a bit of acting here and there, but nothing major, but she was still somewhat of a name. And with the Angela character barely being developed and being a kid in the previous movies, to have her return as an older teenager allowed them to kind of just make their own character out of it, while still having an attractive name for the marquee. Seeing as this is another double feature review, let's just get right into it, shall we? Sleepaway Camp 2 opens with a bunch of campers telling horror stories at a fire, when one of the campers brings up the incident from the first movie at Camp Arawak. Now, from what I've read and what I can decipher, the Sleepaway Camp movies take place in either New Jersey or upstate New York. So one can imagine there are all sorts of different campsites in the area where kids from the inner city and surrounding suburbs frequently stayed, and the Angela story just kind of got around among them. Either way, a stuck-up camp counselor comes to tell one of the teenage girl campers that she can't be out and has to go back to her cabin, and then derides her for having a foul mouth mouth before cracking her in the skull with a log and cutting her tongue out. And yeah, just so you know, that's Angela. They pretty much just revealed that Angela's killing people right away. No sort of mystery, they're just gonna literally get right to the murder. Through the story that the teenage girl camper told, it's implied that at the mental hospital that Angela stayed, the doctors gave Angela gender reassignment surgery, and after she passed whatever psych exams, they just let her go free. This time around, the camp is called Camp Rolling Hills. I actually want to get one of those shirts. And we have a plucky cast of new characters because all the name characters, besides a few, got killed off in the last movie. The main character is Molly, played by Renee Estevez, and we also have such actors as none of these actors did anything after this. But all the characters are named after Brat Pack actors, so it's kind of funny. This movie is very counterculture for the 1980s. My main problem with Sleepaway Camp 2, and this is probably going to be a problem with the sequel as well, is that the movie has this recurrent problem where it's a lot of stuff happening, but at the same time nothing is happening. The Angela character in the first movie was quiet, didn't have a lot to say, she was a victim of a forced sex change and went kind of crazy, but she transforms from that into this overly bubbly positive camp counselor who's all wholesome, and you know, she's trying to get all the kids' spirits up and everything, and she believes all the kids should be good and happy to be there and shouldn't be acting out. But the camp is full of a bunch of rowdy fucking teenagers, so everybody's smoking pot, drinking, pulling their tits out and trying to fuck each other. This movie is really fucking smutty, and that's fine. I don't mind a bit of fucking smut, but yeesh. The movie itself is a parody of slasher films. It pokes fun at the tropes. You know, this was the late 80s, the whole fad had kind of gotten out of hand, and it's a pretty good idea to poke fun at the tropes. You know, the characters that aren't virgins, the characters that do drugs get killed. At this point, it's the only slasher movie where it actually parodied this type of shit besides Friday the 13th Part 6. And quite frankly, I do love Friday the 13th Part 6, but I think Sleepaway Camp 2 hits that note a little better. I would go as far as to say that the Sleepaway Camp sequels poke fun at the slasher genre better than the Scream series could ever hope to. The fact that Angela is blatantly killing these people for smoking weed, being rude, having premarital sex, is openly calling it out in such an in-your-face fashion, and I love it. I love this shit. It is so, like, it's funny, but it's also just very well done. Like, for example, this one chick, Mary.
My name is not Mary, it's Mare. I hate that name.
Whatever, gets drilled, and Angela does give her a chance to apologize for her lewd behavior, but she refuses to.
What are you looking for? A gun?
No? A drill.
And it's just like, fucking Christ, there's just no really getting around the bushes here. It is just straight to the point with the murders, and I love it. Okay, so there is actually a little more to this movie than just the killing, because there is a reason that all the characters are named after Brat Packers. We get this love triangle between Molly, Sean, and Allie. Allie wants to bang Sean, but Sean is interested in Molly, and Allie resents Molly over it. And then there's this other dude that Allie starts banging in a bid to make Sean jealous. The teen drama lends itself nicely to the murders, but we really did come here for the murders. All the supporting characters feel like characters of slasher archetypes. You got the stoner, you got the skank, you got the virgin girl, the male love interest, the promiscuous guy, the tattletale, the loudmouth, the punk kids, and the jock, etc. The funny thing that I realize is a lot of people are like, oh, it's a self-aware slasher, it makes fun of slashers, but they're really missing the point that it's not only parodying slashers, it's parodying that John Hughes era teen drama type shit. Hence why all the characters are named after Brat Packers. It has that very one-dimensional love triangle thing around the slasher thing, and it has all these kind of stereotypical 80s teen movie characters, and it's got that slight bit of melodrama. But then there's a slasher villain in it. It's actually this movie, whoever wrote this, you know, is a genius in some ways. Like, the movie could have been executed better. It's very low budget, but it works, and it's weird how well it works, and it bothers me that people aren't really seeing how much it pokes fun at the entire 80s as a whole. It's a very meta-humor movie. It's self-aware, but not just about the slasher thing, and I really appreciate that, but I'm gonna get back to the movie now. Basically, Angela seems to be trying to have the time at camp that she couldn't have when she was younger, but her mentality is all fucked up as she, quote-unquote, sends campers home for being bad, which basically means she kills them and then tells Uncle John, haha, take that John Hughes, who is the administrator, that she sent them home. Clearly, the other camp counselor, TC, who wants the kids to have fun the 80s way, does not like Angela's strict counseling, and the seeds are set for a rivalry between the two. And Sean reveals actually earlier on that he was supposed to go to Camp Arawak during the events of the first movie, but his parents couldn't afford it, and that his father, who is a cop, arrested Angela the night that it happened. It's an interesting little continuity nod. Put a pin in it because it's going to come up in the next movie. If you didn't get that this was a parody of slasher films, two kids dress up like legally distinct versions of Freddy and Jason to go scare Angela, but then Angela comes out as a legally distinct Leatherface and kills both of them with a chainsaw. So it's just like you got two real nice parodies in here, but it does flow like a John Hughes-esque teen drama, but with better tits. I gotta say though, this movie does have a pretty bad pacing issue. Like, they get so much killing and teen drama done early on that it becomes aimless when it finally reaches the last act. It's another case of the journey being better than the destination. Throughout the movie, Angela forms a platonic attachment to Molly, the good girl character, the virgin who doesn't do any sort of drugs or sexuality, and since, you know, Angela's a serial killer, she's got some sort of weird mental thing. She seems kind of jealous of her romance with Sean, but also protective over Molly when Allie starts bullying her.
Well, let me warn you, he's a lousy lay. We'd be perfect together.
Allie is probably my favorite supporting character in the movie, and it has less to do with the fact that she's got giant tits and goes topless multiple times in the movie than you may think. She's kind of like that one character from Friday the 13th Part 7, Jennifer. The standard alpha bitch character who wants the main guy but doesn't seem to get that he's not interested and goes like to cartoonishly dastardly lengths to change his mind. But whereas Jennifer disappears for half of Friday the 13th Part 7, we do get a fair amount of Allie. Like as mentioned, she starts fucking this other guy to make Sean jealous, which doesn't work because Sean does not like her, and the scene in the bathroom is just like comically drawn out. It's ridiculous. And she finally confronts Molly about their rivalry, and it's the most unintentionally hilarious thing in the movie.
I know you hate me as much as I hate you.
I don't hate you.
Like, fuck. It's funny because throughout the movie, these two barely interact with each other, at least not on the level to form mutual hatred. They actually seem kind of cordial in their first interactions during the Happy Camper song, which...
Oh, I'm a happy camper. I love the summer sun. I love the trees and forests. I'm always having fun.
Yeah, and like, really, Allie just hates Molly for no reason, besides that her crush likes Molly more. I don't know, it's entertaining, and she also has this fucking gem of a line after banging that dude.
Listen, you don't have AIDS or anything, do you?
No.
I love how she's just like asking what at the time was a serious concern, not that it isn't now, but the 80s AIDS was like pretty much a death sentence, and just like she really doesn't give a shit. Like, why are you even asking? Like, why are you that casual about it? It's like it's not something you just like be casual. I don't know, it just makes me chuckle, this line. I'm gonna play it again.
Listen, you don't have AIDS or anything, do you?
No.
She also gets probably the worst death in the movie when she gets jammed into a porta potty and gets covered in leeches and drowns, which I don't understand the physics of it. It doesn't make sense, but it's a good death. This all comes to a head when Uncle John is fed up with Angela sending kids home and Angela gets fired. So she goes and hides out in an abandoned wing of the camp where Molly goes to comfort her and finds the corpse shack. Both end up tied while Angela gives a speech.
How did you get this job here?
Easy. I've got great recommendations from doctors, psychiatrists, even clergymen.
She then burns TC's face off with acid, which, you know, they're making it seem like there's gonna be this big face-off between the two, but no, he just gets it in the face. And then Sean gets decapitated in what is kind of a special effects failure. We get a really shitty, drawn-out chase scene where Angela still thinks she can maintain a friendship with Molly, but... before Molly falls like 10 feet and is knocked out, but Angela thinks she's dead for some reason. And then later that night, one of the camp counselors shows up and sees that every character has just been off-screen to death. The two kids who took naked pictures of Angela while she was changing, the guy who played Blofeld, the dude Allie was banging. Anybody who didn't get an on-screen death is now dead, and, you know, for good measure, Angela kills the witness who just happened to be there at the wrong time. In the meantime, Molly wakes up to go find help, and we get a scene which I don't quite know the point of where Angela hitchhikes, gets picked up by a fat smoking lady who is the fat smoking lady from that episode of Walking Dead, look it up, and then kills her to take her truck. And this line, I've quoted this line before, it's embarrassing.
I mean, the way I see it, I'm just too dumb to drink, and I'm too fat to fuck.
I gotta say, well, this ending, not as iconic as the original, is still pretty good and quotable.
Oh, she cut your hair? Got it, partner!
As a follow-up to Sleepaway Camp, it is not the best. It doesn't really capitalize on the shock value the first one had, but that does not make it bad because this movie is pretty enjoyable. It has some original creative moments and loose references to the previous movie. It pokes fun at the tropes of both slasher movies and those MTV generation teen dramas, and the fact that they did this on a budget of $400,000 is pretty damn impressive. There were some scenes that didn't look so hot, but like all things considered, this is a relatively well-made slasher movie considering the budget. But how's the sequel? Sleepaway Camp 3 was released a year later, but it was shot concurrently with Sleepaway Camp 2 in the same location. They merely redressed the sets from 2 and utilized the same woods in Georgia for the task, as the movie does take place at the remains of the campsite from the second movie. Now, while Sleepaway Camp 2's supporting characters were more like the John Hughes-esque suburban kids with problems type characters, Sleepaway Camp 3 takes a slightly different approach. The basic premise is that Angela kills an inner city girl in order to take her spot as a camper at a summer camp, and I love how this whole sequence is just a blatant Terminator parody. It's just even got the legally distinct music that parodies Terminator's score. But either way, unlike the second movie, Angela masquerades as a camper, not as a counselor this time. Camp New Horizons is what the campsite is called this time around. And it's described by the owners, played by Michael J. Pollard, and some fat woman, as being a social experiment. It's basically a camp where delinquent teenagers from both higher income families and lower income families are mixed together. It's kind of poking fun, I guess, at Reaganomics or something. And we get this nice mix of characters, and they're all troublemakers, unlike the last movie where, yeah, they were troublemakers, but they weren't like actual sociopathic drug kids, not all of them anyway. And there's a cop among the campers who is actually Sean from the last movie's father. Let's see how this plays out. Since all the kids are drug addicts or delinquents or street kids or skanks, there's even more blatant slasher movie karma tropes to be had. For example, the news reporter doing the story, who is totally insincere about everything, asks Angela if there's any coke.
You wouldn't know where I could score some coke.
Yeah, there's a machine in the dining hall.
And of course, the reporter wants blow, so Angela gives her a bunch of cleaning supplies, and when the woman rails it, she dies. At this point, Angela Baker's urban legend status has sort of increased, to the point that someone has defaced the campsite. I'm not sure if this is supposed to be her or whatever, but anyway. Basically, the movie splits each group of campers into threes. One group is with Michael J. Pollard, one group is with the fat woman, and one group is with the cop. Now, my issue with Sleepaway Camp 3 is the exact opposite problem to the issues I had with Sleepaway Camp 2. Whereas Sleepaway Camp 2 had a decent build-up that just kind of fizzled out in the upper middle, Sleepaway Camp 3 in general takes a while to really get going. Sure, there's some solid nudity, the Asian chick from Night of the Demons with the most ridiculous-looking fake tits I've ever seen is in it, and this other chick gets naked, but then you have to watch Michael J. Pollard sucking her tits, because yeah, of course he's a sex pervert. He really went for that, that's uncomfortable. I'm willing to bet when he saw the payday for this movie, he was like, yeah, I'm sucking some tits if I'm gonna be in this, and the director was like, yeah, okay. Now, I imagine the director had to put his foot down when Michael J. Pollard was, you know, trying to get more creative control. He was like, I should suck everyone's tits in this movie. The director was like, no, nobody wants to see you do it once. Who the fuck is gonna want to watch, like, under an hour and a half if you just run around sucking tits? But, like, Jesus fuck. Honestly, like, I'm gonna keep going on about this. Like, the whole fucking, like, what the fuck was this? There's this whole thing where it's like, why the fuck does the chick want to bang, like, a 70-year-old Michael J. Pollard? Like, he's got his fucking undies, like, going on. He's got, like, long johns on. And, like, you know, for added effect, they should have put, like, a little bit of a shit stain on his long johns. They should have just made this, like, extra ridiculous, but it's already pretty fucking ridiculous. I will say the characters are a bit more unique than the last movie. We got the punk rocker, we got the gangsta, we got the Asian biker chick, the southern racist, the cholo, the prankster, Donald Trump, a skank. It's like the last movie, but looking at the more alternative, lesser visited by John Hughes 80s teen teenage stereotypes. I particularly like the part where Michael J. Pollard sucks that chick's tits. I particularly like the part where Angela sees Michael J. Pollard perving on a teenage girl and beats him to death with a stick. It's such a shitty and lame, uninspired slasher kill, but the fact that it's in Sleepaway Camp 3 just makes it hilarious. And of course she kills the chick whose tits he was sucking, and we get this gem of a line.
Good thing you're dead, because in a couple years, your breasts would have been sagging something terrible.
Firecracker Kid gets killed by having a firecracker shoved in his nose, and then Snowboy, who I wish kinda survived a little longer because he's such an annoying little shit,
Party all night! Teenage Wasteland!
gets conked in the head with a stick and then is blown up by more fireworks. I'm starting to think that the $800,000 budget that was spent on both of these movies mostly went to A, the second movie, and then B, Michael J. Pollard, and then some of the more expensive effects, because yeah, the third one's very cheaply made. Look at this decapitation scene. It's like, come on, the last movie even had a better one. That one looked like shit. Actually, nah, you know what? This one actually does look better than the one from 2. This has been a Generation Y Entertainment redaction. It is worth noting that Sleepaway Camp 3 got heavily cut down in terms of violence. There were some incidents in the late 80s in the States. America did the classic thing where they blame a crime someone committed on the media, and as a result, there was a pretty big crackdown on the content of slasher movies in the late 80s and early 90s. The greatest example of this is the absolute fucking rape of Friday the 13th Part 7, which had practically all the gore completely cut out to avoid an X rating. Well, it seemed to have extended to even limited theatrical releases and straight-to-video movies because Sleepaway Camp 3 originally was to be a lot bloodier. But many of the deaths are chopped down to like a PG-13 Alien vs. Predator fucking level of violence. Like, the best example of this is the southern racist woman's death. It cuts right before the moment of impact, but on the work print you see her fucking head smash and explode, and then Angela pokes her in the brain. It's just, I don't know, little things missing, like someone screaming for longer, or an actual shot of the moment of a stabbing, and it just bothers me. And while Angela's going around killing people doing the slasher thing, we actually get sort of a cutesy teen romance angle between characters Marcia and Tony. Tony is a tough cholo from LA, and Marcia is a girl from a small town in Ohio. As far as slasher teen romance angles go, it's not bad. It's kinda cute at times.
God, that Tony guy is so cute. He's Mexican.
And it gets to a point in this movie where it feels like it's just going through the motions. Angela keeps killing people, and we get less and less character moments. Compared to 2, in terms of substance, this one kind of suffers a bit. I like how while Angela's bad, the campers and the staff in this one are arguably just as bad. You find out that the staff purposely cheaped out on the camp, there's no fucking food or anything, so the woman tells the kids to go catch a fish while she fries a big old steak and lays around. Michael J. Pollard, as mentioned, is fucking out grooming teenagers and sucking tits. The cop is a good counselor. He's nice because he's trying to make up for the time he lost with his son. It makes for an interesting B-plot, but it just does not get enough time to really play itself out. Angela just kind of goes from group to group killing people until eventually Marcia discovers the dead body of Lily, alerting the cop character Barney Whitmore, who goes to confront Angela. Unfortunately for him, Angela took the gun off of Riff, the gangsta kid, and left him a little rap.
No style, you got no flair. All you do is fight and swear. So say your prayers and make amends, cause your life story is about to end.
And we're gonna call back to Mare's death from Part 2.
Come on, Angela. What's it gonna be?
A gun.
Being a slasher film, we gotta get rid of the excess weight. The two characters have had like no lines in the movie, get it. And then Marcia and Tony, the cute couple, are the only ones left. I guess in a way to wink to the audience, Angela just kinda lets them go.
But you and Marcia make a nice couple. And as man always says, there's plenty of fish in the sea. Bye.
But, you know, Marcia's crazy and tries to kill Angela after, which admittedly is pretty funny. In the original script, she was actually supposed to have a dog with her at the camp, and the dog was gonna maul Angela, but I guess the budget kicked in, and Angela just gets stabbed and then carted off in an ambulance. And it turns out Marcia had a boyfriend and led Tony on.
You could come visit me.
Yeah, I could do that.
I guess that's a more optimistic end to that twist. Oh, and yeah, Angela survived because they thought they'd get more sequels. Sleepaway Camp 3 is in a weird territory for me. I like it, don't get me wrong, it's just a shitty kind of slasher film. It's fun, it's got some interesting deaths, even more interesting in the uncut work print, and it has its moments of humor. While the characters aren't as fleshed out in 2, they're also less likable, so you feel less bad when they get killed. I don't know if I like it better than 2, I guess on some days I will put it over 2, but on other days I won't. It really depends on what you're in the mood for. Mindless slasher movie? Put on 3. Nuanced parody of both MTV generation teen dramas and slasher films? Put on 2. As a whole, Sleepaway Camp 2 and 3 may not have been what many envisioned as the perfect follow-up for the first movie, considering the first one had very little humor and played the slasher aspects completely straight. But I can appreciate Sleepaway Camp 2 and 3 for basically improving on the self-parody of the slasher genre that Friday the 13th Part 6 presented, and I can appreciate that it made great use of its shoestring budget. Sure, some of the effects are pretty bad, there's some errors in filmmaking, it's not perfect, but somebody had a vision here and they brought that vision to life. You can tell there was some passion behind the project, and as a result, watching both of these make for a pretty good viewing experience. There are themes here, and like I mentioned, how all the kids in 2 had the names of Brat Pack members, how the love triangle aspect is a veiled shot at your average 80s teen drama. Let's be real, the best Friday the 13th movies, parts 4 and 7, actually hit that aspect better than the movies that Sleepaway Camp 2 and 3 are parodying. 3, on the other hand, continues the theming, but this time with the group of rich kids all being named after the Brady Bunch members, and all the poor kids being named after West Side Story characters. If fleshed out a little better, the romance between Tony and Marcia could have easily been a more Romeo and Juliet type deal, with the rich kids and the poor kids not getting along and plotting against each other while Tony and Marcia, you know, have their love angle, with Angela lurking around killing people in the back. As I mentioned, somebody had a vision for both of these movies and somebody made it happen, so I appreciate the layers we can see through its flaws. Of course, Pamela Springsteen is not proud of these movies, she never does any interviews relating to them and has washed her hands of the series for good, which is a shame because I think she's really funny and charming in these. She's so bubbly, but it's just like this fake sincerity. I think she was great and wish she was a bit more open about her experiences and open to talking about it, but who knows, maybe she was treated like shit on set, or she feels like these movies hurt her acting career. No real data on here, as these movies were only limited theatrical releases, kind of in that straight-to-video category. Domestically, the movies made about $500,000 in home media sales to date, which that sounds bad, but keep in mind, this doesn't factor in what it made overseas and in its limited theatrical release or in rentals, so it's safe to say they probably at least made their budget back. With that being said, Sleepaway Camp 3 was the end of the Sleepaway Camp series for a time. It's interesting how one movie was a big hit, and then they made 2 low-budget sequels that are virtually unknown by comparison. I think these movies need a reassessment because they're kind of like Scream in a way, where they deconstruct a lot of the slasher movie tropes. I honestly think people today might like the sequels better than back then. There were plans for more sequels, but they never happened, but these ideas were actually pretty cool. Bonus material, I'm actually just gonna go over what happened with the series after. The 2 ideas for Sleepaway Camp 4 included Angel of Death, where Angela, now I guess masquerading as a high school teacher, runs amok in a high school setting. I guess this would be a full-on Breakfast Club parody, and the second one that I read about is called Summer Stock, which is the far more ambitious one of the 2. So the basic premise of Sleepaway Camp 4 Summer Stock is that a dinner theater group and a cult move into the remains of Camp Arawak from the first movie. The dinner theater group is putting on a show based on the events of the first movie, in which Angela auditions for the role of herself. A cult that worships Angela would have become involved, thinking the play is sacrilege, and they would start killing people, and it was to have Felissa Rose come back and confront the Pamela Springsteen Angela, and they would have a fight to the death, which would have ended with the revelation that one is the real Angela and one is a copycat. I also heard that it was going to be a musical, and that's so fucking batshit crazy that I kind of wish they did it. But on the other hand, Angel of Death had more potential to carry on the parody aspect, but it probably would have come out in the early 90s, and a John Hughes parody would have been pretty passé. There is a partially made and unreleased 4th movie called The Survivor. I never watched it all. I know it's like 32 minutes of actual footage shot and a bunch of stock footage, and it's, yeah, it wasn't released until the 2000s. It was in the DVD set special features, and everybody hated this one. And then finally there was Return to Sleepaway Camp in the 2000s, which was fucking pretty bad. I'm not gonna get too much into it now, but it featured the return of both original creator Robert Hiltzik and Felissa Rose as Angela. And it had some noteworthy actors in it. Isaac Hayes in his final film role, that's Big Pussy from The Sopranos, cameos from the CKY band, and you know, later on Darren Miller actually married Felissa Rose in real life, and I think they actually met on the set of this movie, so something good came of it. And it has at least 2 other returning cast members from the first movie. I'm not sure if I'll ever review this movie because it will require me to actually sit through it, and I don't like that movie. But yeah, it wasn't the shot in the arm revival that filmmakers were hoping for the series and is mostly forgotten. It seems like Sleepaway Camp as a franchise is a victim of its own success. Its twist was so out of the blue and well plotted that there was no way to one-up it. 2 and 3 pretty much did the only thing they could do by making a mockery of the entire genre, and Return was just terrible. With rumors of a reboot or new sequel by Hiltzik floating around, and Michael A. Simpson having expressed interest in his own sequel in the past, who knows what the future holds for the series, but I doubt it will have the impact the first movie had, nor be as entertaining as 2 and 3, but it can't be any worse than Return. Well, that was my second double feature for Halloween season, but I still have a few more videos to pull out of my ass for all you happy campers, so see you later.
Gross! Slimy gopher guts!
Look out! Putrid wild elephant hearts.
Dead teenagers' brains.
Angela, what's really in there?
Dead teenagers' brains.
Never said I liked country, but I'd rather listen to that than a bunch of darkies who can't sing.
Bitch!
Wilf! You dirty nigger.
Bitch!